That brain of mine is something more than merely mortal, as time will show. Ada Lovelace. Though it took over 100 years for her work to be found and truly appreciated, Ada Lovelace rightfully predicted the impact of her work. Today, we stand in the midst of a digital revolution, with the rise of computers, phones, and other electronic devices. From the phones in our pockets to beautiful CGI animated movies, Ada Lovelace's genius has been immortalized in every electronic device and application, and is ingrained into every line of code that makes them work. On top of her contributions to the world of computer science, she is a role model for other girls and women in STEM who often struggle in a male-dominated field. Ada constantly broke through barriers of both thought and tradition, and was a turning point for technology and future women in STEM. This is Ada Lovelace, a love for changing history, one algorithm at a time. Ada Lovelace was born on December 10, 1815. She was the daughter of a famous romantic poet, Lord Byron, and a mathematician, Anna Isabella Milbank. Though her parents of clashing passions and personalities divorced when she was young, Ada seamlessly blended both creativity and logical thinking into her own pursuits. As a young child, she lived with her mother, who, in spite of her ex-husband, kept Ada away from the arts, only allowing her to study math and science. At the time, this was unheard of, and it was thought that a woman's intellect was not for invention or creation, but for sweet ordering arrangement and decision, and that women should never be above their husbands, but they should always support them, according to an excerpt from Sesame and Lilies by John Ruskin. Despite this belief, Annabella Milbank pushed for her daughter's education, and Ada fell in love with her studies, often conducting her own research. When she was 12, she fixed herself completely onto the goal of flying, studying birds and different materials that might help her achieve flight. She compiled her research into a book called Flyology. Her love for mathematics from her mother and rebellious curiosity from her father persisted throughout the years of her childhood. As she got older, she became a regular at parties around London where she met people who would motivate her in her passion for learning, such as Michael Faraday and Mary Somerville. However, her life drastically changed upon meeting her partner and lifelong friend, Charles Babbage. Charles Babbage was an English engineer who was working under the British government to create a machine called the difference engine. However, he had also been drafting the design of the analytical engine, the world's first general-purpose computer. Ada was completely fascinated by his idea.
The beauty of his work, indeed, with the analytical engine was the fact that it went beyond addition to all kinds of computation. And I think what Ada Lovelace saw in that process, in that crucial move to the analytical engine, was the possibility of a universal machine. A machine which really, in principle, could do anything.
Upon realizing Ada's brilliant mind and deep passion for his project, Babbage decided to ask her to translate and annotate an article written in French by Italian engineer Luigi Menabrea called Notions sur la machine analytique de Charles Babbage, or Elements of Charles Babbage's Analytical Machine. The initial purpose of the analytical engine was to input, store, and process data. It was practically a very large, very complex calculator. Ada's notes demonstrated deep understanding of the analytical engine, defining algorithms, particularly in Note G, which essentially gave instructions for the machine to calculate Bernoulli numbers, which help us understand patterns and calculations by revealing relationships and properties within mathematics. This note is recognized as one of the first lines of code ever created, but Ada felt that this code, which told the analytical engine how to process Bernoulli numbers, held much more potential than anybody else at the time had ever thought of. She believed that computers, like the analytical engine, had the potential for more than just mathematical calculations. Ada wrote that it might act upon other things beside number, where objects found whose mutual fundamental relations could be expressed by those of the abstract science of operations, and that the machine might compose elaborate and scientific pieces of music of any degree of complexity or extent. Essentially, Ada knew that because the analytical engine could calculate Bernoulli numbers, it could process different patterns and use them to do things other than calculation, such as create art or music. Moreover, Ada Lovelace realized that the only limit to a machine was the mind of the programmer. Ada's revolutionary commentary and translations were published in scientific memoirs selected from the transactions of foreign academies of science and learned societies in 1843. Unfortunately, Ada died at 36 to uterine cancer, and the analytical engine would never be constructed. However, her dreams for computers lived on to be discovered by Alan Turing, who would become known as the inventor of the first modern computer. Almost 100 years after Ada's death, Turing published an article called Computing Machinery and Intelligence, in which he questioned Ada's idea that the abilities of computers were defined only by what humans could make them do. Turing had an opposing idea that computers could mimic any logical process. However, his ideas on computers were fundamentally inspired by Ada's. Her emphasis on the creative possibilities of machines influenced Turing's belief in the possibility of artificial intelligence, and her visionary annotations about the analytical engine inspired Turing to explore theoretical foundations of computation, all of which led to his great innovations in the field of computer science. However, Ada did not only catalyze the development of computer science, but she also defied society's expectations of women by pursuing her passion for math and science, innovating with both logic and creativity, which very few male researchers of her time had ever thought to do. Her ideas did not just change the course of computer science, but they were a bold yet necessary example of feminism during a time of rigid inequality, contributing to the beginnings of the feminist movements that would happen years after her death. Ada's work wasn't recognized for over 100 years after its publication, but her thinking was far beyond her time. She had a deep understanding of the analytical engine, but also anticipated its range of possibilities. Almost all of her ideas about programming, looping, and the abilities of computers are still true today within our own technology. She inspired people like Alan Turing, who changed the world with electric computers, and paved the way for women in STEM like Katherine Johnson, whose calculations brought success to NASA's first crewed space flights, and Grace Hopper, who developed the first accessible programming languages in English. Ada, like many other women, is often overshadowed by the achievements of men and forgotten throughout history, but her impacts on the world are not. She changed the tide for thought around and beyond mathematics as a whole, breaking through boundaries of machines and setting the stage for many women after her.